So this is a prototype dingwall that I've just been using on this tour. It's based off the combustion body style, but it's got the two pickups mounted right next to each other. And one of the wiring options that I use exclusively is those two pickups in series with one another, which gives you a massive humbucker sound. Along with that, it's got a custom preamp made by Dark Glass Electronics. And I spent a bit of time with them refining, especially the mid-range control, to get it to be a kind of frequency area where you can really boost the kind of throaty, honky mid-range sound of the instrument, which I find works very well with my tone, without it getting muddy or kind of emphasizing the pick attack too much or anything like that. Aesthetics-wise, you'll notice it's got black hardware, which the combustions have nickel. It also has this cool carbon fiber pickguard with these cutouts here which actually go through to the bodywood underneath. This one's yellow, but it will be available in several different color options, and you'll be able to see that through the pickguard there, which is a pretty cool feature I like a lot. So yeah, look out for this one at NAMM 2014. So this is my other yellow bass. It's a Canadian afterburner model, 6-string. It's tuned with a low F sharp, and this is to accompany the 8-string guitars when the guys are playing those. This is the inspiration for the twin pickup in series configuration of the prototype bass. This bass just sounds absolutely massive. It's got a wangy neck, which I think contributes quite a lot to that. It gives it maybe a little bit of that Warwicky kind of mid-range where it's very throaty. But it's incredibly clear and powerful sounding, and I just love the sound of this bass. So this is definitely a staple of the lineup. So this is one of my original dingwall basses. It's a regular combustion model. I have two like this one in white and the other one's in black. They have maple necks. Since it has twin pickup volume controls, what I tend to do is run them both on full and then knock back the neck one slightly. You just hear the mid-range get a bit throatier. I seem to be using that word a lot. I guess it's a quality that I like in the bass tones that I go for. Anyway, just knocking that back, kind of until it's pointing around that screw there, tends to get me the sound I like. I used to run these in passive mode. I now use them in active mode with just a little boost on each pot, so it's a little bit of treble and bass boost. This one's tuned to drop C across the first 4 strings with a low G. That's to accompany the 6-string guitars when the guys are playing those. So I'm not really riding on the G, the C is the main string that I'm playing on. Last but not least, this is my custom G-Spot Temptress 6-string. I've actually just grabbed it in the middle of restringing, so it doesn't actually have the top string on there. But this is an amazing bass made for me by Steve Gammon down in Florida. It's the only non-dingwall that I play. It's kind of the only bass I've found that can really keep up with that. It's a 35-inch scale, so it's not quite as long as the dingwalls, but it still sounds incredibly clear on the low string, which is great. It has a custom-designed preamp that Steve designed along with one of the other Florida luthiers, which I think is great. It's a very powerful preamp. It gives a whole load of tone shaping options. It's a very lightweight bass. It's got a curly redwood top with a very lightweight swamp ash body. And then it's got a wangy and cherry neck, which is, cherry's a wood that Steve seems to like to use. I just told him to make whatever he thought was going to sound good, and this bass does sound incredible. I use Circle K strings, although I believe they're about to be rebranded Kalium strings. These strings sound awesome to me, and not only do they come in a length that's long enough for the dingwalls, which being 37 inches long can be quite tricky to find, but they also come in some really thick gauges. I'm using a 175 on this bass here. They go actually a lot heavier than that even. That means that I can get a good tension even in the really low tunings that we use, so these strings are kind of a godsend. The picks I use are Dunlop Tortex picks. These are ones with my signature on them and whatnot, but they're actually the same as the orange 0.6mm Tortex picks that you can buy. Just the bog standard ones with the regular tips. I like using quite a thin pick for bass. What I find that does is it keeps the strings very in tune when I'm picking, prevents them from having too much of an excursion, both pitch-wise and physically. And it also kind of acts like a compressor in that if I pick harder, it flexes more. Just means that I sound quite even when I pick through the strings. So in the rack drawer we have 2 pedals here that go in front of the axe effects in my signal chain. The first of these is the Origin Effects Cali 76, which is this gigantic compressor pedal here. This is by far the coolest sounding compressor I've ever come across that isn't a rack studio unit. And like the name suggests, it's based on an 1176, the famous Uray studio unit. The way I run this is I have the attack set as slow as it can go, which actually lets the front end of the note through, so you get a nice pop to the front end, and the release set as fast as it can go, which means that the compressor doesn't hang around once you've kind of let off. Running on the lowest ratio, which is 4:1, which is still a pretty aggressive ratio on bass. And the input and output controls determine the amount of gain reduction. I'm pulling anywhere between 10 and 16 dB of gain reduction when I'm picking hard, which is quite a lot, but this compressor pedal doesn't sound messy or anything like that. Other compressor pedals I've tried, I can't compress anywhere near as hard as that without it sounding really messy. So just to demonstrate what the Kali 76 is doing in the loop, in the signal chain, I've just bypassed it now, and the kind of effect is mainly that it just sounds like I'm picking harder, but here's without. And here's with. It's particularly noticeable when I snap a note like, and then without. With. So yeah, it just adds a really nice kind of spank to the front end there. Then the second pedal is the Dark Glass Electronics Microtubes B7K, which is my absolute favorite boost pedal for bass. And I'm kind of using it a little bit differently on this tour. Instead of using it for actual drive, I've got the drive shut all the way off this time. And I'm just using it to sculpt the sound a little bit. So I'm using the raw mode, which cuts a little bit at low end, but then blending back some of the original signal on there. And then I'm kind of EQing the wet signal with some more low end, some more low mids, which is actually more like a 1K kind of control, quite high up, and then a little bit of high mids as well. So that's quite an aggressive sound, and I'm blending that back in with the regular DI. And that just means that my sound is a little bit more focused, a little bit more aggressive, and has a little bit more drive to it just from the level when it hits the Axe effects. Without that on, it's a very different sound to what I currently have. That really kind of gives the character that I'm after. You can hear the difference very clearly when I turn it off. So this is without. Here's with. Just kind of leans everything up, gives it a little bit more aggression. Again, without. With. And especially on the really low notes, like my low F sharp here. Without, just gets a bit flubby. With. And last but not least, over here is an MXR DC brick power supply, which is powering both units. That's a really nice little power supply, and what's great is it supplies 18 volts, which enables this compressor pedal here to work as it's supposed to. We've got my Line 6 G90 wireless system, which is the wireless that I use. That feeds into the front end of the pedals in the drawer there. And that runs into my Fractal Audio Axe FX 2 here, which is just an amazing unit. With the new updates which allow what are called scene controls, I've actually only got to use one preset for the whole show that we do, and that's just my 00 preset. And I change between the scenes to scene 2 and 3 to toggle differing amounts of gate and also to take out the overdrive portion. As you can see from this little control here, I'm using two different amps. One of them is the Tube preamp model, which is just like a slightly warmed up DI sound. And I have that in parallel with the 5153 Blue model, which is quite a distorted guitar amplifier, and that's providing the kind of grind and aggression to my tone. That runs into this Matrix GT 1600 FX, which is a new addition for this tour, and I'm loving it. It's a solid state power amp, 800 watts per side. It sounds amazing, and that's going to be driving the cabs on stage, which we'll get to in a second. However, before that stage, there is a DI being taken from the Fractal and run to the front of house. This is one of two Zilla 6x10 cabinets that I'm using on this tour. These are absolutely amazing cabs made for me by my good friend Paul over in the UK. They have Celestion speakers in them. They are the Neodymium 200 watt models, I believe, which might be a slightly unusual choice for what we do because they don't have a huge amount of bass extension. But what I find is that helps keep things really tight. What I don't want is to have flubby low end. So these do a really good job of that. We have one of these mic'd up, there's one on either side of the stage. This one's mic'd up with an Audio-Technica ATM25 microphone, which I love the sound of for bass, and that's blended with the DI from the Axe effects at the front of house by our front of house guy, Alex. So that whole rig together sounds like this. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Really hope you found some informative stuff in there. I've never been happy with my live tone, so it's been a real pleasure to show you what I'm doing on this tour.